The latest Newspoll since The Voice was defeated gives some rare good news to the coalition side of politics. It shows a narrowing in the primary vote, but also a narrowing between the views of the two leaders being mostly, of course, Peter Dutton and Anthony Albanese. Joining me live now is the Leader of the Nationals, David Littleproud. David, good to see you. First of all, you've probably had a little glimpse at these numbers. Is it giving you a bit of a spring in your step this morning?
Look, I'm always cautious around polling. The only one that really counts is on election day. But it does mirror much of what we've been seeing in our own internal polling. In fact, in the regions, people have profoundly supported the Nationals for the pragmatic approach that we've taken in leading the debate, whether it be on The Voice. We made a principled position early, not on one that if it was on constitutional recognition that we'd oppose, but on more bureaucracy. And we took a principled position on nuclear energy, which we've now finally got the Liberal Party to agree to come with us in a new coalition government. And we've taken a principled position on vaping as well. So we've already seen that many had supported our position, and I think it's important we continue to be able to demonstrate that. But there's a big lesson here for the Prime Minister, that he's out of step with the Australian people. He misread the nation. He put in place a divisive referendum that cost $450 million and effectively has now seen that he's divided the country, and all he's done is driven up Australians' cost of living, and Australians invariably changed their position when it's been bled out of their wallets.
So you think these changes in the numbers is because of what Anthony Albanese did, his position on The Voice, not anything else, not cost of living or anything?
Well, I think they're intertwined. Okay. I think there's a deep frustration by the Australian people that the Prime Minister focused his energy on The Voice rather than the cost of living pressures that Australians are feeling. And unfortunately, the cost of living pressures, we may see that again tomorrow when the Reserve Bank puts up the RBA rate by another 25 points. If they do, that adds more pressure. But it's also the fact that what's driving inflation isn't the discretionary spend. Australians have stopped going to Jerry Harvey and buying white goods. The discretionary spend stopped, but their fixed costs continue to go up in their failed energy bill and what they're trying to put through in their energy policy. 82% renewables by 2030 comes at a big cost, and that's why the Nationals took a leadership role when I first became leader and said to the Prime Minister, let's have a National Energy Summit. Let's have a conversation about what that energy mix should look like, and let's not be afraid of the possibilities of nuclear energy that will give us zero emissions, reliable energy that's affordable. Let's run the ruler over this, and if we're wrong, I'm prepared to be proven wrong. But let's have the courage to have that conversation and bring the Australian people into our trust. And then when you add that to food costs, everything's going up, and Anthony Albanese hasn't been focused on what's important to the Australian people.
Sure, we can have a conversation about nuclear, and I know where you stand on it, but you can't really suggest that, having a discussion about nuclear energy is going to do anything to inflation that people are experiencing right now.
Well, that coupled with what it's all about at the moment is just supply and giving confidence to energy companies, whether they be gas or coal at the moment, that if they invest in things like carbon capture storage, then they can continue to have investment confidence in keeping supply up. In fact, I met with a Japanese minister only last week, and they're very concerned about the sovereign risk Australia provides because of the safeguards mechanism. This has been about the demonisation of gas. We can put more gas into the domestic system as well as the international. We can reduce emissions with carbon capture storage. But if the government puts in policies that strip away that investment confidence, supply goes down and prices go up. And we can shift that dial very quickly. We've wasted 18 months of demonising gas companies. We could have actually had more holes being drilled, carbon capture storage projects put in place, Biden administration spending $1.2 billion on carbon capture storage projects. Why wouldn't we follow that in reducing our emissions and giving us supply? We can do that tomorrow.
Might I suggest that there's a fair bit of confidence in Australia's energy system, energy market at the moment. You just have to look at the multi-billion-dollar record bid that Brookfield is willing to pay for Origin, right?
Well, I think you'll find that's more about ideological views and about how they're going to shift away from gas. But it's not David Littleproud that's saying that, that renewables are going to fail. We can't just rely on them in isolation. You actually listen to AEMO. You need firming power. And I'm not against renewables, but there is a place for renewables. But when we're stripping down remnant vegetation, destroying the very thing that we're trying to protect, tearing up prime agricultural land, taking away food security, and putting up 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines to plug in these wind towers and solar panels. That's not common sense. Let's get the mix right, let's get the location of these right, and let's firm it up. And you need to firm it up with gas and particularly nuclear, where you can have zero emissions with carbon capture storage, and in nuclear's case, with it's zero emissions straight up.
But I guess my point is Brookfield obviously sees a lot of confidence in the future of the gas market in Australia, among other things.
The challenge we've got is the regulatory framework we're putting around it. I lost a $1 billion project out in my electorate, 120 petajoules, 10% of the Australian East Coast market, because they lost confidence with the safeguards mechanisms, price caps, codes of conducts. We didn't need those when we were in government because we worked collaboratively with gas companies because they understood it was about supply. And they were told, just remember this, you shouldn't demonise gas companies. When they developed all those reserves in Queensland, they were told by Anna Bligh and Julia Gillard to export them because Queensland government didn't want them competing with their coal-fired power station and bringing new energy into the system because they were taking a $1.5 billion dividend into their coffers every year. So they've got to shift. They're prepared to shift to more domestic supply. Gas companies are prepared to do that. We've just got to create the environment for them to do that. And it's not like building a coal-fired power station or a nuclear power plant that takes a decade. You can drill these holes and get into the system in less than 12 months. That's the exciting thing about gas and how we should be continuing to support it to firm up renewables and supplementing it with new technologies.
All right, good to see you. Oh, just before I let you go, Jacinta Price talked about as the first black Prime Minister. Would you be happy to facilitate a move to the lower house to see that timeline push forward?
Yeah, look, I think Jacinta's a real talent. She's proved that. And if she wants to come to the lower house, obviously she might struggle to be Prime Minister as the Nats, although if she can bring us all the way and have national majority government, I'm all for that. I'm all for that straight away. We take some common sense to Canberra. But I think Jacinta, it'll be in her own time, and whatever she decides, we'll back wholeheartedly. I backed her to be the Indigenous Affairs Minister to support her in that. She's got a real passion for that, and I think her practical lived experience is important in implementing that very quickly, but her future is in her hands, and whatever she decides, I'll be backing her every step of the way.
David, thanks so much for your time as always.
Thanks for having me.